She declared we should end our relationship, making sure everyone at the table heard. We were seated in a mid-tier Italian restaurant, featuring exposed brick and lighting intended to appear romantic for the camera. My wife sat opposite me, impeccably styled, her phone tucked nearby but within easy reach. Flanking her on both sides were her three dearest friends, their wine glasses momentarily halted midair. The chatter ceased instantly. Utensils paused, all gazes turned towards me. They weren't surprised. She spoke aloud what they knew. They waited for my response. I leisurely finished my water and placed the glass down, looking intently at her. She held my gaze steadily. If anything, she seemed readied, with a slight lift of her chin and straightened shoulders. This wasn't an accident, it was a deliberate move. I gave a single nod and confirmed my agreement without raising my voice or posing questions. I neatly folded my napkin and placed it on the table, pushed back my chair, and stood up. I wished her well, turned, and walked towards the exit. Behind me, she called my name with a tone of surprise, followed by indistinct murmurs from her friends. A chair moved on the floor as I passed by the bar, where a couple was capturing pictures of their drinks. Ignoring it all, I stepped out into the chilly night air. My phone buzzed twice in the parking lot, but I ignored the notifications. Climbing into my car, I started the engine and drove home. It wasn't until an hour later that she realized I hadn't stormed off. I had left. By the end of the evening, she comprehended I was not cooling down. 3 days afterward, she understood something more profound. I wasn't returning. We had been married for 7 years at that point. In a financial company, I served as a systems administrator, a role where most days found me in a server room or logging in remotely before sunrise. Stacks of machines blinked with lights, maintaining the tranquil ambience of my workspace. Problems were straightforward there. Either a system functioned properly or it did not. Rarely was visibility required for problem solving. My spouse dwelled in a contrasting realm. She functioned as a social media strategist at a lifestyle firm, orchestrating accounts for brands and influencers. Her days were a blend of events, launches, rooftops, and cafes selected for their lighting. Her phone seldom rested. Stories were published before meals grew cold. TikToks were trimmed within Ubers. Attention was considered as currency, and she traded it proficiently. We crossed paths years ago at a tech and media symposium, tied the knot a year and a half later, and for quite some time our disparities harmonized. I remained in the shadows. She maintained her position before the camera. Approximately 10 months prior to the restaurant opening, she was tasked with managing a prominent lifestyle influencer named Tyler Cross. In his early 30s, perpetually unattached online, boasting around 200,000 followers. Photo shoots took place 4 or 5 times a week. She began arriving home late, justifying it by stating that Tyler was meticulous and preferred to redo everything until the results appeared effortless. At first, there were no noticeable changes. Then her phone started landing screen down on the table. She ceased sharing her anecdotes with me, labeling them as work exclusive and mentioning that brands disliked external perspectives. Simultaneously, her private account underwent a transformation. Pictures emerged of cafes, sunsets, and minimalist eateries. Tyler was consistently present in these images, albeit never tagged explicitly, often implied. Captions focused on creativity and lengthy workdays. Inquiries about their relationship status were common, to which she never responded. She merely acknowledged the hearts and continued posting. A week prior to that dinner, she omitted her iPad at home. She phoned from a rideshare service and inquired if I could review a client message that was supposed to arrive. At that moment, I was logged into my work console, overseeing a regular server update, and the iPad was already unlocked on the kitchen counter. I retrieved it, activated the messaging app she mentioned, and discovered that the screen wasn't displaying email at all. Telegram was active. At the top of the screen was Tyler's name. The conversation was located near the bottom, suggesting someone had recently reviewed it. I didn't respond. The previous conversation remained unanswered on the screen. His message revealed he needed to end their secretive interactions and gave her 2 options: tell her husband or he would. Beneath it, a 3-day-old timestamp marked her response. She promised to deal with it that week and asked him to trust her. I closed the iPad and returned it to its original spot. That night she arrived home late once more, removing her shoes, discussing lighting problems and retakes while heating leftovers. Her phone vibrated on the counter. She chose not to respond. Instead, she turned it over and continued talking. Before bedtime, she mentioned dinner plans for the following day. She suggested her friends wanted to catch up and asked if I would join. She made the offer casually, heading towards the bedroom already. I agreed. The next day, she took care in selecting her attire for the restaurant. Not extravagant, but deliberate. Before leaving, she checked her reflection and adjusted her hair one last time. I exited with her towards the car. I was aware of what take care of it this week implied. I knew where it would occur, and I anticipated being there when it transpired. Upon her suggesting we part ways, I grasped the situation instantly. The table wasn't accidental, nor were her friends. Neither was the timing. She had deliberately chosen a public locale, trustworthy witnesses, and a phrase that was conclusive enough to be recounted later without context. This was orchestrated as a moment she could reminisce about. I remained calm, didn't press for clarification, and didn't show any signs of surprise. I dealt with it as if it were what it truly was, a declaration. I rose and departed. By the time I arrived at the apartment, my phone was already buzzing with messages. I neglected to read them. Instead, I walked directly to the bedroom, took a suitcase from the closet, and commenced packing. I began with garments, followed by the laptop, external drives, and crucial papers from the filing cabinet. Efficiently, much like managing outages at work, I targeted crucial matters while leaving undisturbed what was irrelevant. 2 hours passed, and half of my closet stood bare, my bathroom shelf cleared on my side, the spare charger vacated from the living room socket. On the kitchen counter, I neatly placed my keys in the center. Next to them, a solitary message scrawled on paper lay waiting. No queries, no clarifications. I exited, got behind the wheel, and headed for my brother's residence across town. Unsurprisingly, he was still awake. He glimpsed the suitcase, moved aside, and posed no inquiries. Before dawn, I signed a temporary lease agreement for a furnished apartment. By the end of the following day, electronic divorce documents were submitted. I concealed it all, merely executing my plans. During the initial hours, she presumed I had taken a drive or stayed with a companion to calm down. At around midnight, my phone began vibrating on the nightstand at my brother's house, with an abundance of unopened calls and messages piling up. By morning, the situation had escalated. The calls were more frequent and the messages lengthier. She inquired about my whereabouts and expressed the need for a conversation. She admitted that her words at the restaurant hadn't been meant as they were perceived. I opted to remain offline throughout the day. Upon her return to the apartment later that afternoon, she likely expected me to be there, perhaps on the couch or in the bedroom. Instead, she found my side of the closet empty, the bathroom free from my belongings, and the kitchen counter barren save for my keys and a note. Her call followed soon after, her voice raised as she questioned the sincerity of my actions and whether this was some form of retribution. I allowed her to finish before explaining that I had taken her words at the restaurant exactly as they were spoken, reminding her it wasn't a private conversation and wasn't phrased as a question. She attempted to clarify that she merely wished to discuss issues and the location was inconsequential. I interrupted momentarily, informing her of a message received on Telegram. I read aloud the message's content regarding telling or being told. I also mentioned the exact time it was sent. The line fell silent. She uttered my name once, more deliberately this time, as if contemplating. I disclosed that she hadn't sought conversation, but rather witnesses and a clean break she could manage. I granted her that. I concluded the call before she had a chance to respond. That call marked the last unmediated exchange between us. The divorce transpired more swiftly than anticipated. There were no offspring, shared possessions beyond furniture or valuable assets up for debate. All proceedings were handled by lawyers and email. Documents were electronically signed. Dates were arranged without dialogue. 2 months passed and it was finalized. I relocated to the temporary apartment I had leased on the initial night. The place featured white walls, limited furnishings, a desk near the window. I arranged my workstation that same evening, linked my screens, and resumed managing systems the following morning as if no alteration had transpired. Within a week, I exited every social platform, accounts erased, profiles vanished. I blocked colleagues and acquaintances who weren't essential for work purposes. My name ceased to appear in her tagged photos because there was nothing left to identify. By the conclusion of the 3rd month, I no longer occupied her digital sphere. I learned about updates from a former coworker who continued to follow her out of habit. Approximately a month after the divorce became official, she posted a photo with Tyler. The scene was radiant, his arm visible, her smile directed toward the source of light. The caption expressed how wonderful things occur when one ceases to feign. The comments accumulated swiftly. Encouragement, acclaim, individuals praising her for prioritizing herself. No one brought up a husband. No one inquired about the time frame. The narrative was neat and effortless to process. Screenshots circulated more swiftly than any possible clarifications. I remained silent, neither defending nor rectifying anything. As her life unfolded publicly, my own shrank to work, rest, and routine. I deliberately became inaccessible. She had spun her story. I had exited hers. For the initial week, I stayed with my younger brother who resided in a city-edge townhouse, characterized by thin walls and a garage reeking of oil and cardboard. On the first night, he offered a towel and directed me to the guest room without inquiry. On the second night, we sat side by side at his kitchen counter, takeout containers between us with muted TV background noise. Midway through our meal, he inquired if she had made the breakup public. I nodded affirmatively. He remarked he had anticipated it. He asserted that those who end relationships publicly aren't truly concerned about the split. They seek the moment. In this rephrased text, I have preserved the original meaning and length while using a different sentence structure and word choice for variety. They seek witnesses, aiming to dictate the subsequent narrative. I remained silent during his speech, not interrupting nor adding anything. He asserted she may have anticipated tears, quarrels, perhaps a plea. Instead, he claimed she would have wanted an account of resilience. However, none of that unfolded. Rather, I stood up and departed, disrupting the intended script. The room fell momentarily silent before he tapped his bottle against the counter once, stating that when one person declines to play a role, the scene disintegrates. No climax, no applause, merely an empty table and people gazing at each other. He said she received the breakup she requested, albeit not in the manner she had envisioned, recounting it later. Subsequently, he shifted the discussion to work, mentioned a news report about a network outage, engaging in ordinary conversation, no counsel, no orations. That evening, I slept peacefully until dawn for the first time since dining at the restaurant. The following day, upon departing from my apartment, he didn't accompany me to the door. Instead, he merely instructed me to text if I required assistance. Unsurprisingly, I did not. Fate intervened 5 months later during a weekday afternoon in a downtown bookstore, characterized by expansive windows and soft music playing at a volume sufficient to minimize dialogue. Positioned towards the rear, I was perusing a technical paperback when her reflection caught my eye through the glass of a display case. She was nestled within the self-help section, sporting a new hairstyle but still clutching the same phone. Caught off guard by my presence, she paused momentarily before approaching as if it were rehearsed. Inquiring about a conversation, she requested 3 minutes of my time. Upon examining my watch, I obliged her. We retreated to a secluded spot near the window, deviating from the main aisle. She stood in close proximity, almost too close, as if proximity was something she could disregard by acting otherwise. Without hesitation, she began speaking, sharing that matters with Tyler had concluded. She delivered this information swiftly, seemingly eager to lead the narrative. She admitted he was dating another blogger now, not disclosed this to her. Instead, she noticed the information in his social media posts, a picture, a caption about a new phase with fire emojis, comments overflowing. She confessed that she wasn't prepared for it. Her voice trembled when she expressed her disappointment that he hadn't informed her earlier. I stayed quiet, listening. Toward the end of our conversation, she reached out to hold my hand, just touching my sleeve. I distanced myself. She apologized, admitting her error in judgment and haste. I gently reminded her that she was the one who ended our marriage publicly for freedom, and Tyler did the same. Her allocated time expired. I wished her luck, turned and left towards the shelves. She didn't pursue me. Instead, she remained by the window, fixated on her phone as if expecting a change with prolonged gaze. 7 months later, I heard her name mentioned again. During a regular work conversation, a past colleague casually disclosed the information as if I was already aware. She mentioned her social media account suffered a significant drop, losing almost half of her followers within 2 months. The tenor of comments under her posts shifted. People were no longer cheering, but rather questioning. They wanted to know about Tyler's whereabouts. They inquired about the disappearance of the joy she had so publicly announced. They questioned why the narrative ended without an explanation. Some comments accused her of fabricating another false chapter, while others shared old screenshots that she could not delete promptly. Within weeks, pictures with Tyler disappeared from her feed, followed by a post announcing the end of pretense. Despite this, copies were already being circulated. Screenshots spread faster than revisions. A friend from her circle spoke up about a public breakup and ended marriage in front of an audience. The portrayed tale didn't reach her firm as a dramatic event, but rather as background information. Clients were subtly departing. Contracts from brands were momentarily halted. Gradually, projects ceased renewal. The consistent theme was authenticity. Approximately at the same time, Tyler moved to Los Angeles. New residence, new illumination, new collaborator in his content. His metrics escalated. Time continued slipping. I chanced upon a single clip incidentally while someone browsed nearby. He seemed unchanged, laid back, already showcasing a new phase without referencing the old one. She was no longer part of his tale. She had lost grip over hers. I neither contacted nor responded. I neither questioned nor rectified anything. I observed it all unfold like ambient sound from a disconnected system. 9 months subsequent to the restaurant, an email from her popped up in my inbox. The subject line hinted she needed clarification. The message was brief. She inquired why I had left without attempting dialogue, without posing queries. She didn't request an explanation. Instead, she penned that it seemed like 7 years vanished with a single gesture. She questioned how I could depart so neatly. That night, I remained silent without responding. 2 days later, I responded in a single paragraph. I reminded her of the words she had used. I detailed the table, the spectators, the loudness of her voice. I noted that what she said wasn't presented as a debate. It was announced as a verdict. I informed her that I had followed suit and exited without causing a commotion. 3 days elapsed with no response. Then another message came in. She wrote that Tyler did the same to her. She stated he published photos with another creator without prior notice. She learned, just like everyone else, through stories and captions. She felt embarrassed watching people comment as she was simultaneously discovering. She finally grasped what it meant to be utilized for a public spectacle. I responded once more. In essence, I stated that the discrepancy was straightforward. Initially, I was her husband, he was her business partner. She transformed our marriage into a high-profile separation to dictate the tale. He, in turn, made her a transitory figure. I told her she swapped privacy for publicity and got the same kind in return. She chose not to respond. A month after her personal account became private, her lavish posts vanished. The narrative ended. All that was left was an impersonal work profile filled with brand logos and scheduled content. No clarifications, no depictions. I didn't alter her account of events. I merely distanced myself from it. Thanks for hearing my tale to the end. Please share your thoughts on this in the comments. Subscribe. More unspoken stories await you.